I'm Lydia, and I'm 31. During Christmas dinner, I'm thanking my aunt for the wonderful keychain she sent me for my birthday 2 months ago. My aunt stops stirring the gravy, stares at the table in silence, and says calmly, "I bought you a $400,000 apartment. The keychain came as a bonus." The smiles disappear from everyone's faces. One by one, my family members turn white as paper. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt like the family outsider. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. Let me back up and tell you how we got here. Picture this. A perfectly set Christmas table. My stepmother's best china, candles flickering, and the scent of her famous honey-glazed ham filling the dining room. Everyone's laughing, passing dishes, playing the perfect family. My dad's carving the turkey with his usual precision. My 19-year-old half-sister Emma is scrolling through her phone, even though phones are supposedly banned at dinner. And my stepmother Linda is directing traffic like the general she is. And there's me, sitting in the same spot I've occupied for 15 years since Dad remarried, right next to little Aunt Margaret, who flew in from Phoenix as a surprise. I'm genuinely happy to see her. She's the only person in this family who's ever treated me like I actually belong here. "Aunt Margaret," I say, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "Thank you so much for the keychain you sent for my birthday. It's beautiful. I carry it everywhere." I pull it from my purse. A simple silver chain with a small heart charm. Nothing fancy, but coming from her, it meant everything. The room goes quiet. Not the comfortable quiet of people enjoying good food, but the kind of silence that makes your stomach drop. Aunt Margaret's fork hovers halfway to her mouth, her eyes narrowing as she looks around the table. Dad stops carving mid-slice. Linda's smile freezes like it's been painted on. "Keychain?" Aunt Margaret's voice is dangerously calm. She sets down her fork with deliberate precision. "Lydia, sweetheart, what keychain?" That's when I realize something is very, very wrong. The way Emma suddenly sits up straight. The way Linda's hand trembles as she reaches for her wine glass. The way Dad clears his throat like he's about to deliver bad news. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. To understand why this moment feels like a bomb going off, you need to know what my family is really like. And trust me, it's not the Norman Rockwell painting they pretend to be. Growing up as the stepdaughter in this house was like being a permanent guest who'd overstayed their welcome. My mom died when I was 7, and Dad remarried Linda 2 years later. Linda brought her own special brand of subtle cruelty disguised as concern for my well-being. While Emma got designer clothes for school shopping, I got carefully selected items from the clearance rack. "We want to teach Lydia the value of money," Linda would explain to relatives. As if frugality was a character-building exercise meant only for me. When Emma wanted a car for her 16th birthday, she got a brand new Honda Civic with a bow on top. When I turned 16, Linda suggested I could borrow her old minivan when it wasn't needed for family errands, which turned out to be approximately never. The pattern was always the same. Emma's needs came first. Emma's wants were necessities, and my requests were luxuries we couldn't afford. When I wanted to take art classes, Dad said we needed to prioritize practical skills. When Emma wanted piano lessons, they hired a private instructor who came to the house twice a week. College was where the inequality became impossible to ignore. I spent my senior year of high school working at a movie theater to save money, wrote dozens of scholarship essays, and chose my state school specifically because I could afford the in-state tuition. Emma, on the other hand, applied to 5 private colleges with application fees that cost more than I made in a week at the theater. But here's the thing that really got to me. They acted like this was normal, like treating their daughters completely differently was just natural family order. When relatives commented on the disparity, Linda would smile sweetly and say, "Each girl has different needs. Lydia is so independent and responsible. Emma needs more guidance." Translation: Lydia can figure it out herself. Emma deserves to be taken care of. The only person who ever called them out on this was Aunt Margaret, my dad's sister. She was the one who sent me graduation gifts, who remembered my birthday every year, who asked about my life like it actually mattered. She never had children of her own, but she treated me like I was precious, which, after growing up in this house, felt revolutionary. When I graduated college with my nursing degree, magna cum laude, and debt-free, thanks to scholarships and working through school, the family celebration consisted of dinner at Applebee's. When Emma graduated high school with a C+ average, they threw a party that cost more than my car. By the time I moved out, I'd learned not to expect much from them. Christmas and birthday gifts were practical items I needed anyway. Holiday celebrations were events I attended but didn't really belong to. Family vacations were things they planned around my schedule, not something they invited me to join, which is why Aunt Margaret was so important to me. She was the only person who made me feel like family. By 25, I'd built a life that looked nothing like theirs. I was a single mom working as a pediatric nurse, living in a small apartment with my 4-year-old son, Danny. His father had disappeared the moment he found out about the pregnancy, leaving me to figure everything out alone, which, honestly, was pretty much what I expected by then. The apartment was tiny but clean, with hand-me-down furniture and toys from garage sales. Danny didn't care that his high chair came from Goodwill, or that his bedroom was really just a corner of the living room with a colorful curtain divider. He was happy, healthy, and loved. That's all that mattered to me. My family's relationship with Danny was complicated. They claimed to love him, of course. Linda would post pictures of him on Facebook with captions about being the world's best grandma. But when it came to actual help, like babysitting so I could pick up extra shifts, they were mysteriously always busy. Emma, now in college at a school that cost more per year than I made, would occasionally drop by to play with Danny for an hour before complaining about how exhausting children were. Dad would visit monthly, bringing small toys and staying just long enough to feel like he'd done his grandparent duty. The one person who showed up consistently was Aunt Margaret. Every few weeks, she'd drive 2 hours from her house to spend the weekend with us. She'd arrive with homemade cookies, new books for Danny, and genuine interest in our lives. She'd babysit without being asked, help with household projects, and treat both Danny and me like we mattered. When Danny got sick with pneumonia at 3 years old, requiring a week-long hospital stay, she took time off work to help. She slept in the uncomfortable hospital chair, brought me changes of clothes, and held Danny when I needed to shower or eat. My own father visited twice during that week, both times for less than an hour. That's when I realized who my real family was. It wasn't the people who shared my last name or lived in the house I grew up in. It was the person who showed up when things got hard. Last year, when Aunt Margaret called to tell me she'd been diagnosed with breast cancer, I didn't hesitate. "What do you need?" I asked immediately. "When are your appointments? Who's driving you to treatments?" The answer, predictably, was nobody. Dad was too busy with work. Linda had a prior commitment with Emma's college activities. Emma was, of course, too young to handle such serious matters. So, I became Margaret's transportation, her advocate, her support system. Twice a week for 6 months. I loaded Danny into his car seat after my shift and drove 2 hours to Margaret's house, then another hour to the cancer center, 3 hours for treatment, another hour back to her house, and 2 hours home. Danny learned to entertain himself quietly in hospital waiting rooms, coloring in books that Margaret bought him. During the worst of the chemotherapy, I'd stay overnight, making sure she ate, took her medications, and didn't fall. Danny would curl up next to her on the couch, his small hand patting her bald head gently. "Aunt Maggie is brave," he'd whisper to me. "Yes, she is," I'd agree. And she deserved better from her family than what she was getting. The night Margaret finished her last round of chemo was one of the best nights of my life. We sat in her living room, Danny asleep between us, and she grabbed my hand with more strength than she'd had in months. You saved my life, she said quietly. Not just medically, though your nursing skills certainly helped. You showed up when everyone else had excuses. You made me feel loved when I felt forgotten. I squeezed her hand back. Your family. Real family. This is what people do for each other. Her eyes filled with tears. Your father called me twice during the entire 6 months. Twice. Linda sent a card. Emma texted occasionally. She shook her head in disgust. But you, working full-time, raising a child alone, you found a way to be here every single time I needed you. The anger in her voice was new. Margaret had always been diplomatic about family conflicts. The peacekeeper who smoothed over uncomfortable moments. But cancer, it seemed, had burned away her patience for pretense. After Richard died, she continued, referring to her husband who'd passed 3 years earlier, I thought about changing my will. He left me well provided for, and we never had children. I'd always planned to leave everything to your father, assuming he'd take care of Emma and help you as needed. But this experience has shown me who actually deserves my consideration. I felt uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Margaret, you don't need to. Yes, I do. Her voice was firm. You need to understand something, Lydia. I've been watching your family dynamic for years, making excuses, hoping things would improve. They haven't. If anything, they've gotten worse. She was right. Even during her cancer treatment, when you'd think family would rally together, the patterns remained the same. Dad would call me for updates on Margaret's condition rather than calling her directly. Linda would ask me to relay messages instead of picking up the phone herself. They treated me like a communication service between them and Margaret rather than recognizing that I was the one actually caring for her. When Margaret's hair started growing back and her energy returned, she began making plans. I'm going to travel, she announced one afternoon. All those places Richard and I talked about visiting but never got to. I'm starting with Europe in the spring. 3 months of seeing everything I've always wanted to see. I was thrilled for her. After everything she'd been through, she deserved every moment of joy and adventure she could find. But I was also going to miss her terribly. Margaret was my anchor in the family, the person who reminded me that I was worthy of love and consideration. Before I go, she said, I want to do something special for your birthday. 28 is a big year, starting your late 20s. I have plans. My birthday was in October, and Margaret left for her European adventure right after my birthday in late October. She'd beaten cancer, and she was finally living the life she'd dreamed of. Her postcards arrived weekly, filled with stories of art galleries in Paris, beaches in Greece, and pasta in Italy. She sounded happier than I'd ever heard her. 3 days before my birthday, a delivery truck pulled up to my apartment building. I wasn't expecting anything, so I was confused when the driver handed me a clipboard to sign. But there it was, my name and address. A package from Margaret with a European postmark. Inside was a small jewelry box containing a simple silver keychain with a heart charm and a note. Happy birthday, sweetheart. This is just a little something to hold you over until I get back and give you your real present. All my love, Aunt Margaret. It wasn't much, but knowing she'd thought of me while exploring ancient ruins and famous museums made it perfect. I attached it to my keys immediately and carried it everywhere, just as I'd told the family at Christmas dinner. What I didn't know then was that this small keychain was meant to be an afterthought, a placeholder for something much, much bigger. October 28th, my birthday, came and went quietly. I worked a double shift at the hospital because holiday pay helped with Christmas expenses for Danny. When I got home, exhausted but grateful for the extra money, there was a voicemail from Dad wishing me a happy birthday and apologizing for forgetting to call earlier. Linda had apparently reminded him. Emma sent a text message with cake emojis. No card, no gift, no invitation to dinner. Just acknowledgments that, yes, this was indeed the day I was born 28 years ago. It wasn't surprising, but it still stung a little. Danny, at 4, had made me a construction paper card at daycare with handprints and the words, "I love Mommy," spelled out in glittery letters. His gift was worth more than anything they could have bought me. Anyway, I called Margaret that evening using the international number she'd given me for emergencies. "I got the keychain," I told her, fingering the silver heart. "It's beautiful. Thank you for thinking of me on your trip." "Oh, sweetheart." Her voice was filled with laughter and something else I couldn't identify. "That little thing is nothing. Wait until you see what I really got you. It's going to change your life." I assumed she meant a nice piece of jewelry, or maybe something special from one of the countries she was visiting. Margaret was generous, but her gifts were usually thoughtful rather than extravagant. A scarf from Ireland, or a cookbook from Italy, would have been more than enough to make me happy. November passed quickly. Margaret's postcards kept arriving, showing her adventures in different countries. She sounded energetic and joyful, making up for all the time she'd lost during treatment. In one card, she mentioned that she'd asked Dad to handle something important for her while she was away. Something about my birthday present. I thought that was odd. Margaret usually handled her own affairs, and she'd never involved my father in gift-giving before, but I assumed it was something simple. Maybe having flowers delivered, or coordinating the shipping of something too large to send internationally. December arrived with the usual pre-holiday chaos. My work schedule intensified as other nurses took vacation time, and I was saving every penny for Danny's Christmas gifts. We'd started our Advent calendar tradition, reading Christmas stories each night and drinking hot chocolate while looking at lights in our neighborhood. During this time, I noticed Emma posting pictures on social media from what looked like a new apartment. The photos showed a beautiful living space with modern furniture, huge windows, and expensive-looking decorations. When I mentioned it to Dad during one of our brief phone calls, he said Emma had gotten a great opportunity to house-sit for someone traveling internationally. "Lucky girl," I said, not thinking much about it. Emma always seemed to land in comfortable situations. When she'd needed an internship for college, Linda's friend magically had an opening at her marketing firm. When she needed a summer job, Dad's business partner suddenly needed an assistant. Emma moved through life with invisible hands smoothing her path. Meanwhile, Danny and I were planning our own humble Christmas. We'd made paper snowflakes for decorations and planned to buy a small tree from the lot down the street. I'd saved enough to buy him the Lego set he'd been wanting, and a few smaller gifts. It would be a simple Christmas, but it would be filled with love. The invitation to Christmas dinner at Dad and Linda's house came in mid-December, the same generic phone call I got every year. "We're having dinner at 3, Linda informed me. "Margaret is flying back as a surprise. She wanted to spend Christmas with family." My heart jumped. I hadn't seen Margaret since before her trip, and I'd missed her terribly. The thought of having her at Christmas dinner made the whole event worthwhile. Maybe this year would be different. Maybe with Margaret there, I'd actually feel like part of the family instead of a courtesy invitation. I spent extra money I couldn't really afford on a nice dress for dinner, and a small gift for everyone. Danny was excited to see his great-aunt again and to play with whatever new books she'd inevitably brought him from her travels. I had no idea that Margaret's surprise return was about to expose a betrayal that would shatter my understanding of my family forever. Christmas morning dawned cold and bright. Danny woke up at 6, as children do on Christmas, bouncing on my bed with excitement about Santa's visit. We opened our modest pile of presents by the small tree, and his joy over the Lego set made every extra shift I'd worked worth it. Getting ready for dinner at Dad and Linda's house, I felt oddly hopeful. Margaret's postcards over the past 3 months had been filled with stories of self-discovery and adventure. Maybe her new perspective would bring some positive energy to our family dynamic. Maybe this Christmas would be the turning point I'd been hoping for my entire adult life. Danny looked adorable in his little button-down shirt and tiny khakis, clutching the book about dinosaurs that Santa had brought him. "Will Aunt Maggie have presents from far away?" he asked as we drove to the house where I'd grown up. I'm sure she'll have wonderful stories, I told him. And maybe something special, but remember, spending time with her is the real gift. The house was decorated exactly as it had been every year since Linda moved in. White lights, silver and gold ornaments, everything coordinated and perfect. Christmas music played softly in the background, and the dining room table was set with Linda's finest china. Emma was already there, wearing a new designer dress and shoes that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Lydia. Dad hugged me warmly, and for a moment, I let myself believe this was genuine family affection. Danny, my boy, look how you've grown. Linda air-kissed me near both cheeks, careful not to disturb her makeup. You look lovely, she said in the tone she used when she was being politely civil. Emma's been telling us about her new living arrangement. Such a wonderful opportunity. Emma beamed, launching into a detailed description of the apartment she was house-sitting. It's in the best part of downtown, she gushed. 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a gourmet kitchen, and floor-to-ceiling windows with an amazing view. The owner left it fully furnished with the most beautiful things. I feel like I'm living in a magazine. I made appropriate impressed noises while setting Danny up with his coloring books in the living room. Emma had always been lucky with opportunities, and house-sitting a luxury apartment was exactly the kind of thing that fell into her lap regularly. Speaking of apartments, Dad said, glancing at Linda, how's your housing situation going? Still renting that place near the hospital? It's working out fine, I replied carefully. I'd learned not to mention financial struggles around them. Any admission of difficulty would be met with suggestions for budgeting or lifestyle changes, as if my problems were simply matters of poor planning, rather than the reality of single motherhood on a nurse's salary. The doorbell rang at exactly 2:30, and Linda rushed to answer it. Surprise! Came a familiar voice, and there was Margaret, tanned and radiant, carrying a suitcase and wearing the brightest smile I'd seen on her face in years. Aunt Maggie! Danny launched himself at her legs, and she scooped him up with enthusiasm that showed how much she'd missed us, too. My darling boy, you've gotten so tall. She hugged me next, holding me tight. And my sweet Lydia, I've missed you both so much. She looked incredible. The weight she'd lost during chemo had been replaced with muscle from all the walking she'd done in European cities. Her hair had grown back thicker than before, and her skin glowed with the confidence of someone who'd spent months doing exactly what she wanted. How was your trip? I asked, genuine joy filling my voice. Your postcards made it sound like the adventure of a lifetime. It was everything I dreamed it would be and more, she said, her eyes twinkling. But I was ready to come home to the people I love most. Over the next hour, Margaret entertained us with stories of her travels. She'd hiked portions of the Camino de Santiago, taken cooking classes in Tuscany, and spent weeks in museums she'd only dreamed of visiting. The whole family seemed more relaxed with her there, as if her presence reminded them how to actually enjoy each other's company. As we sat down to dinner, Margaret caught my eye across the table and winked. I have something very special to tell everyone, she said. But first, let's enjoy Linda's beautiful meal. The conversation flowed more naturally than it had in years. Even Emma seemed less focused on herself, genuinely interested in Margaret's adventures. I found myself relaxing, remembering what family dinners could feel like when they weren't full of underlying tension. That's when I made the comment that changed everything. Reaching across the table to squeeze Margaret's hand, I said with genuine warmth, Aunt Margaret, thank you so much for the keychain you sent for my birthday. It's beautiful. I carry it everywhere. The silence that followed was not the comfortable quiet of a family enjoying time together. It was the silence that comes before an explosion, heavy with secrets about to be exposed. And Margaret's expression as she slowly set down her fork told me that this Christmas dinner was about to become unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. The silence stretches for what feels like an eternity. Margaret's fork hovers over her plate. her eyes moving slowly from my face to Dad's, then to Linda's, then to Emma's. You know that moment in movies when the music stops, and you hear every small sound amplified. The ticking of the grandfather clock, someone's nervous breathing, the soft clink of ice settling in water glasses. Keychain, Margaret repeats slowly, like she's testing the word. Lydia, sweetheart, what keychain are you talking about? I pull it from my purse, holding up the simple silver chain with the small heart charm. This one? You sent it for my birthday with that sweet note about it being something to hold me over until you got back. Margaret stares at the keychain like it's a snake that might bite her. Then she looks around the table again, and I watch her face change. The warm travel glow hardens into something I've never seen before. Pure, cold fury. I didn't send you a keychain, she says quietly. I bought you a $400,000 apartment. The words hit the table like a physical blow. Emma's phone clatters onto her plate. Linda's wine glass slips from her fingers, red wine spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. Dad's face goes through several colors before settling on gray. And me? I just sit there blinking stupidly, because surely I misheard. Surely my 70-year-old aunt didn't just say she bought me an apartment worth more than I'll make in 10 years. Surely this is some kind of European humor I don't understand. I'm sorry. What? I managed to say. Margaret's voice is deadly calm. Before I left for Europe, I called your father. I told him I wanted to do something special for your birthday. Something big. You'd spent 6 months taking care of me during the worst period of my life, driving 4 hours round trip twice a week, staying overnight when I was too weak to be alone, bringing Danny to chemo appointments because you couldn't afford a babysitter. She's looking directly at Dad now, and he's shrinking in his chair like a scolded child. I told him I'd found a beautiful apartment downtown. 2 bedrooms, perfect for you and Danny. Safe neighborhood, good schools, close to the hospital where you work. I put down the full purchase price and had the deed transferred to your name. My brain is struggling to process this information. An apartment. A real apartment with my name on the deed. But Emma said she was house-sitting. House-sitting. Margaret's laugh is bitter. Emma, sweetheart, whose apartment have you been living in for the past 2 months? Emma's face crumbles. She looks at Linda with pure panic, like a child who's been caught lying about breaking something valuable. Mom, you said you promised me. What exactly did she promise you? Margaret asks, and her voice could freeze fire. The floodgates open. Emma starts crying, but not the delicate tears of a wronged princess. These are ugly, panicked sobs of someone whose world is collapsing. Mom said you'd never find out. She said Aunt Margaret would be traveling for months, and by the time she got back, I'd be settled, and you'd just have to accept it. I have to hand it to them. The logic is almost impressive in its audacity. Take a gift meant for me, give it to the golden child, and frame it as fairness because I already had somewhere to live. You know, my tiny 2-bedroom rental where Danny and I share the living room because his bedroom is actually a converted closet. Dad finally finds his voice, though it comes out as more of a croak. Margaret, I can explain. Linda convinced me it would just be temporary until we could buy Emma her own place. I thought we'd have time to explain everything to you when you returned. Oh, please do, she says, leaning back in her chair. Explain to me how you took an apartment I bought for Lydia and decided Emma should live in it instead. Explain to me how you forged thank you cards in Lydia's name. Yes, Richard, I received 3 lovely letters from Lydia thanking me for the wonderful apartment and telling me how settled and happy she was there. My mouth falls open. They wrote thank you letters. Actually sat down and pretended to be me, expressing gratitude for a gift they stole. The sheer planning involved is breathtaking. We were going to tell her eventually. Linda jumps in, and I almost laugh at how predictable she is. When caught red-handed, Linda always has a timeline that makes everything acceptable. We thought Emma needed the space for college just for a few years. Lydia is so independent. She's been managing fine on her own. We were going to give her the apartment after Emma graduated. In 4 years, I say flatly. You are going to give me my own birthday present in 4 years. It's not like that, Dad says desperately. We just thought practical considerations. Emma's education. And there it is, the same old song. Emma's needs come first. Emma's future matters more. Emma deserves the better option because she's Emma, the golden child who's never had to work for anything, never had to sacrifice, never had to choose between buying groceries and paying rent. I look around the table at these people I've called family for 24 years. Dad squirming in his seat, avoiding my eyes. Linda frantically calculating how to spin this into something acceptable. Emma still sobbing like she's the victim in this scenario. And you know what? For the first time in my adult life, I feel completely calm. Not hurt, not angry, just clear. Like someone just handed me glasses after years of trying to see through a dirty window. Margaret stands up slowly, her hands shaking with barely controlled fury. When she speaks, her voice trembles with emotion. So, all 3 of you knew this apartment belonged to Lydia, and decided to steal it anyway. Is that what I'm understanding here? Dad looks genuinely stunned. Margaret, we never meant. I want the keys to that apartment right now. Margaret, please, let's discuss this rationally. Dad starts rationally. She laughs, and it's not a pleasant sound. You want to discuss rationality? Let's talk about how rational it was to steal from your own daughter. Let's talk about how rational it was to lie to me for 2 months. Let's talk about how rational it is for Emma to be living in an apartment that doesn't belong to her. Emma's face crumples with genuine panic. We were supposed to have more time. You weren't supposed to thank her at dinner. Emma? Margaret's voice is ice cold. Your mother lied to you. That apartment was never meant for you. It was purchased specifically for Lydia, with her name on the deed, as a thank you for taking care of me when the rest of this family couldn't be bothered. The truth of that hits the table like a physical slap. While I was driving Margaret to chemo appointments, staying overnight when she was too weak to be alone, bringing Danny to waiting rooms because I couldn't afford babysitters, where was everyone else? Dad was too busy with work. Linda was overwhelmed with Emma's college preparations. Emma was too young for such serious matters, but taking credit for my gift, they had time for. The keys, Margaret repeats now. Linda tries one more deflection. We spent money decorating it. Emma needed furniture, bedding, kitchen supplies. We've invested thousands. Money you spent on stolen property. Margaret cuts her off. Would you like me to call the police and explain the situation? Because I have documentation of the purchase, the deed transfer, and copies of every forged letter you sent in Lydia's name. The threat of police involvement changes everything. Dad's face goes pale, and even Emma stops sniffling. Linda fumbles in her purse and produces a set of keys, placing them on the table like she's surrendering a weapon. Margaret scoops them up and turns to me. Lydia, would you like to see your apartment? Would I like to see my apartment? The apartment I didn't even know existed until 5 minutes ago. The apartment that's been mine for 2 months while I've been paying rent on a place where my 4-year-old son sleeps in a converted closet. Yes, I say quietly. Yes, I think I would. As I stand up to follow Margaret, Emma grabs my arm. Lydia, please, you have to understand. I didn't know it was meant for you specifically. I thought it was just family property, and Mom decided I should use it for college. I look down at her hand on my arm, then at her face. For a moment, I see the little girl who used to follow me around when she was small, before Linda taught her that we weren't really sisters, just 2 people who happened to live in the same house. Emma, I say gently, did you really not know the apartment was specifically meant for me? Look, we all knew you'd never fight back. You never do. Mom said you'd just accept it eventually, like you always do with everything else. The honesty is breathtaking. They hadn't just stolen from me. They'd calculated that I would be too passive to defend myself. I carefully remove her hand from my arm. But this time, you were wrong. Margaret is waiting by the door, her car keys already in hand. Are you ready, sweetheart? Danny has been remarkably quiet throughout this entire exchange, coloring in his dinosaur book and occasionally looking up at the adults with the resigned expression of a child who's learned that grown-up conversations often don't make sense. I gather him up along with his books. We're going to see a new place, I tell him as I buckle him into his car seat. Aunt Maggie has a surprise for us. As we pull out of the driveway, I see Linda and Emma standing in the doorway watching us leave. Dad is nowhere to be seen. He's probably in his study doing what he always does when family situations get uncomfortable, hiding until someone else fixes it. The drive to downtown takes 20 minutes, during which Margaret fills in the details I've been missing. The apartment is in a converted historic building with original hardwood floors and huge windows. It's walking distance from Danny's daycare and a short commute to the hospital. The neighborhood has tree-lined streets, a small park, and the kind of coffee shop where locals actually know your name. I looked at dozens of places, Margaret says as we drive through increasingly nice neighborhoods. But when I saw this one, I knew it was perfect for you. It felt like home. We pull up in front of a beautiful brick building with black shutters and flower boxes in the windows. It's the kind of place I'd walked past before and imagined living in, but never seriously considered because it was so far out of my price range. 3rd floor, Margaret says, leading us to the entrance. Corner unit with views of the park. The elevator is small and charming, with brass buttons and wood paneling. Danny presses the button for the 3rd floor and bounces with excitement. When the doors open, Margaret leads us to a door marked 3C and unlocks it with the keys she took from Linda. The door swings open, and I step into the most beautiful living space I've ever seen. The apartment is stunning, not because it's fancy or expensive, but because it's perfect. Warm hardwood floors stretch through an open living area with windows that flood the space with natural light. The kitchen has white cabinets and granite countertops that gleam like they've never been used. Through the living room windows, I can see the park Margaret mentioned, with mature trees and a playground where children are playing, even in the December cold. 2 bedrooms, Margaret says, leading us down a hallway. This one would be Danny's. Danny's potential bedroom is twice the size of our current living room. It has built-in bookshelves, a large closet, and windows facing east, so he'd wake up to morning sunshine. He immediately runs to the window and presses his face against the glass. Mommy, look, swings. The master bedroom takes my breath away. It's spacious without being overwhelming, with enough room for a real dresser, maybe even a reading chair. The closet is bigger than Danny's current sleeping space, but what gets me is the bathroom. A full bathroom with a deep tub, perfect for long soaks after difficult shifts at the hospital. The previous tenant left some furniture, Margaret explains as we walk back to the living area. Basic pieces that I thought you might want to keep. That's when I noticed that the apartment isn't empty. There's a sectional sofa in soft gray fabric, a coffee table that looks like real wood, and a dining set that could actually seat 6 people. The kitchen is stocked with dishes, cookware, and even small appliances. But these aren't the basic pieces Margaret mentioned. These are expensive items, carefully chosen to complement the space. The kind of furniture I browse in stores, but never buy because it costs more than I make in a month. Margaret, I say slowly, this furniture is brand new. She smiles sheepishly. I may have gone a little overboard with the move-in preparations. I wanted you to be able to walk in and feel at home immediately. I sink onto the sofa, and it's exactly as comfortable as it looks. Danny climbs up beside me, already claiming his spot. Is this our new house, Mommy? I think it might be, I tell him, though I'm still struggling to believe this is real. My phone rings, jarring me back to reality. Dad's name appears on the screen, and Margaret nods at me to answer it. Lydia, where are you? His voice is tight with stress. We need to talk about this situation. What situation is that, Dad? You know what I mean? The apartment thing. We can work this out. Maybe Emma can stay there just until the end of the semester. Then we'll transition. I look around the beautiful living room, at Danny already arranging his dinosaur figures on the coffee table. At Margaret watching me with encouraging eyes. No. What do you mean, no? I mean, no. Emma can't stay here until the end of the semester. No, there won't be a transition period. No, we can't work this out. This apartment belongs to me. It's been mine for 2 months while I've been paying rent somewhere else because you decided your daughter deserved my gift more than I did. Lydia, be reasonable. Emma has already moved in, started classes from that location. Her whole routine is built around